All right, we're going to pull back the curtain on the incredible high-stakes story behind the creation of the very first iPhone. This is the story of a secret project that literally changed the world, told by the people who were actually in the room. So let's just dive right in. This was the prediction made to Steve Jobs right before the iPhone launch. And you gotta understand, Apple had never done anything this massive before. Even they knew this wasn't just another product, it was a premonition of a revolution. But to even get there, they first had to solve a huge problem. So why build the iPhone at all? Well, the answer really lies with Apple's biggest success at the time, a product that was so dominant it actually created an existential threat for the company itself. I mean, think about it. By the mid-2000s, the iPod was an absolute juggernaut. It was responsible for a staggering 50% of Apple's entire revenue. But inside Apple, the team was already asking this critical question: what could kill the iPod? And the biggest concern was crystal clear: cell phones. The team noticed everyone had a cell phone, and yeah, they were all complaining about them. But the crucial part was these phones were starting to include music players. It was only a matter of time before some company made a phone that was good enough to just completely cannibalize iPod sales. Apple knew it had to disrupt itself before somebody else did. So their first idea seems logical, right? Just add a phone to the iPod, but the execution, oh boy, it was a spectacular failure. They tried dozens of ways to use that iconic click wheel to dial numbers, and every single attempt felt like using an old rotary phone. It was clumsy, it was unintuitive, and ultimately it was just a total dead end. So the project was basically stalled. But then a lunchtime conversation between Steve Jobs and a team member completely changed the game. It pointed towards this radical new technology they were secretly developing. This was the question Jobs posed. See, Apple was already working on a multi-touch tablet project, and he started to wonder, what if we could shrink that incredible technology down to the size of a phone? And that question was the spark for everything. So Jobs takes the team member into a secret room, and what he sees is the breakthrough, right there on full display. On a surface the size of a ping pong table, a projector was beaming a Mac interface that you could actually interact with using your entire hand. 2, 3 more fingers. It was a massive working multi-touch display. And for Steve Jobs, this was it. This was the moment. This mind-blowing room-sized demo was the technology that could not only save them from the threat of cell phones, but let them create something completely new. The problem was solved, but a new, even more intense challenge was just about to begin. Okay, so having the core technology, that's great, but it wasn't enough. By 2005, the software designs for this new phone, they just weren't revolutionary. They didn't feel right, and Steve Jobs was getting extremely impatient. At a design meeting, Jobs was blunt. He didn't mince words. He just told the team their work simply wasn't good enough. This wasn't the breakthrough he had envisioned. And then he followed it up with a pretty stark warning. He gave them a 2-week ultimatum. 2 weeks. He said, create something truly phenomenal, or I'm handing the entire project over to a rival design team inside Apple. The pressure was just immense. And just look at how the team responded. They worked 168 hours a week for those 2 weeks. I mean, that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They never stopped. The company even put them up in a hotel room across the street so they wouldn't waste time commuting. So when they finally presented their new design, the room was completely silent. Jobs didn't say a word, didn't move, didn't ask a single question. And after this incredibly tense pause, he just said, "Show it to me again." And after seeing it that second time, he was blown away. They had cracked it. The project was saved. All right, so with the main interface approved, the team now faced what they called the biggest science project of the whole thing, creating a software keyboard that people would actually, want to use. You have to remember, at the time, the king of mobile typing was the BlackBerry. Its physical keyboard was so addictive, people literally called it the Crakeberry. The iPhone's unproven software keyboard had to be just as good, if not better. That is a huge ask for a technology nobody had really ever used before. This meant inventing an entirely new interactive language. Things we totally take for granted now, like pinch to zoom or that little rubber banding bounce you feel at the end of a list, none of that existed. The team had to imagine it, design it, and perfect it completely from scratch. And the ultimate keyboard breakthrough was just pure genius. It used AI to predict what you were trying to type. So for instance, if you type the letter T, the software guesses you might type H next.
The visible key for H stays the same size, but the invisible touch target underneath it gets bigger, making it way easier to hit. It was so accurate, it felt like magic.
So as the launch event got closer, the project was shrouded in almost unimaginable secrecy, which, you can guess, created a total pressure cooker environment for that final public reveal.
The project's codename was Purple, and the secrecy was absolute. They even had a Fight Club poster on the wall just to remind everyone. It was so compartmentalized that the hardware teams building the phone weren't even allowed to see the final software, and the software teams couldn't see the final hardware.
This is incredible. The software on the phone for the keynote demo was still extremely buggy. The presenters had to follow this perfectly choreographed script. They called it a golden path. One wrong tap, one single step out of sequence, and the phone could crash. On stage, in front of the entire world. It was a true high-wire act. The audience inside that keynote, well, it was the typical tech crowd. But the reaction outside, from the public, that was something else entirely. For the first time ever, people were lining up in these massive queues that stretched around city blocks into parking lots, and not just at Apple stores, but at AT&T stores too. This was not just a product launch, it was a full-blown cultural event. And that public reaction, that was the first real sign that the iPhone was going to have a much broader societal impact than just being the best phone ever made. And it really leaves you with this final thought. How did a device born from such intense pressure and secrecy manage to not just change a market, but to completely change society itself?